Hello and welcome to Geometry with Mr. Clausen. Today we are going to talk about the big project. So everything that you've been doing with the blueprint project to this point has all been done to prepare you for this assignment. All right, and what we're going to do today is BPP 12, which is designing a house. And as I was just mentioning, this is a cumulative activity where you will utilize all the skills from BPP 1 through 11 to go and make a blueprint for a house with specific parameters. All right, so you'll be able to draw up your own blueprint, and you'll need to draw this so that it follows building codes, and then you'll determine the square footage and the estimated costs and place electrical components and other key aspects of the blueprint design. So some things that you'll want at your disposal: you'll need a ruler, you'll need some graph paper, kind of like this stuff here, pencils, you'll need the BPP 12 walkthrough document. That's what this whole packet is. The BPP 12 rubric, which is also in this packet, and a home inspection record, which is also all in this packet. So a lot of this has already been put together for you, and that's a big part of what this video is. And so first thing that you'll want to do is make sure that you put your name on your stuff. And then as far as this packet goes, this just gives you some instructions to get started, but the whole packet is part of this BPP 12 submission. And a big reason for this packet is so that no calculation is missed, and it is just a nice way to kind of lay everything out so that you know you got everything and I know where to find it, type thing. And so some things that I want to go over super briefly before we get too far into this project is the basic instructions. So your house, it has to have at least 3 bedrooms. All right, so the goal of this house is that it's going to be adequate for a family of 4, so at least 3 full bedrooms, 1 full bathroom, a full kitchen, a dining area, and a living room. And there must be adequate closets and storage space for a family of 4 or more. Remember to include space for a water heater and the washer and dryer. The cost of the lot should not be a factor in the construction costs. All right, so it doesn't matter if you are doing a lakefront property or, you know, Duluth East Hillside. We're not going to factor that into this particular activity. But the total construction cost for your house, including the garage, must be under $300,000. So that is going to limit the square footage that you're going to be able to do. Now, if you want to build a gigantic mansion, I will talk about what students have done in the past if that's something that you want to do. The quality of construction to be used by the builders will be based on the median cost per square foot found in Activity 5. All right, and so that was when we did the median cost activity, and we found that price. You'll want to write this down if you don't have this. The median cost that we found was $166, and I believe it was 81 cents in terms of that number. So that's something to keep on hand. Homes should be designed to fit on a 72-foot by 120-foot deep lot. There must be side yards that are a minimum of 8 feet wide, and the house must be set back 20 feet from the front of the lot. All right, so I'm just going to give you a quick pointer on this because I get asked this every year. You know, so what does that mean? So if you have a, you know, let's say you have your lot, and let's say it's 72 feet wide and 120 feet deep. You know, let's say this is the road right here. All right, so based on these requirements, there is a 20-foot utility easement. You can't build your house on the utility easement. This is sanctioned by the city for their access in case they need to dig up water lines or those type of things. So you can't build anything on that. Now, the other thing that you can't do is you can't build on the very edge of your property. So you need to leave 8 feet of space for just walking around and that type of thing. And that needs to be done all around. And so technically the amount of space that you have to build your lot in all right, is 92 feet by, let's see, 72 minus 16, so that would be 6656. Okay, so you have a huge amount of space to play with here in terms of how you want things to be laid out, or if you want the road over here, for example, you know, your utility easement would be over there. And so what you should be getting from this is that 56 feet by 92 feet is really the amount of room that you have at play here, and it is a significant amount of room. I mean, if you take up this entire space, it's going to cost a lot more than $300,000. But just know that's the size lot that you're going to use, and this is important because in BPP 13, it's going to be an extension of BPP 12, looks at the architectural site plan. So you actually are going to take your house and draw in a lot like this and show how it's going to be sitting based on how you designed it. So thing to kind of keep in mind in the future. Now, you must include a 2-car garage. Now, generally, those are 20 by 24 feet, but you can make yours larger if you want. The cost per square of the garage is half the rest of the house. Okay, so this would mean that your garage cost is about, you know, $83 and some odd cents instead of the full price there, just like we did for BPP 5. This was actually BPP 4. I guess I have to update that a little bit. Sorry. Now, the assignment should be 50% complete, your rough draft. This is going to be due for May 22nd for you guys. So if you're watching this video on a future date, just make sure you're referring to this sheet in terms of your dates or what you were told in class. But May 22nd is going to be the day this year that you have to have at least a 50% rough draft. Now, what my hope is that you have a substantial start to your project. I don't want to be arguing with you about what 50% looks like. I mean, if you don't at the very least have like your exterior, interior walls in place, I'm just telling you now that's a pretty tough argument. But you know, if you got that in place and you're starting to pencil in a lot of those different things, I want to make sure that you're kind of plinking at this little by little and making your progress, because this is a tough assignment to do as a marathon, and it generally stresses students out a lot when they try to do that. And there's a big reason I usually allocate 2.5 to 3 weeks for this project, just because it is time consuming, and you know, and it's enjoyable if you can take your time with it. You know, so try not to delay it too much is what I'm trying to say. So activity 13, the big reason for this is we'll have BPP 13 after that date, and then what we'll do with that video is I'll talk about how you lay out an architectural site plan, and I'll show you some examples of that. And then what we're doing this year is the full assignment will be turned in by 3:30 p.m. on May 29th. Okay, this is the last day of either the semester or school in our case this year, and it needs to be turned in or there's going to be significant deductions to your grade. So this year what I'm doing, because we're going right to the very end of the school year with the COVID-19 stuff, it's a 50% penalty if it's turned in afternoon, and it's a 100% penalty if it's not turned in by the following Wednesday. And a big part of this is that these take a significant amount of time for me to grade, so I really need them all in one spot to just sit and go through them and get your grades in for the grade book. And so that's a big reason for those grading criteria and stuff there. So keep all that in mind. That is on place. And yeah, so we'll go through the rest of this a little bit. Actually, I think before I get there, I'll show you a little bit of an example. Granted, this is going to be a very elaborate example, but this is actually a plan that I drew up when I was in, I think, 9th grade when I did this. So yeah, probably the same age that you guys are. And I have redone it in my adult life, but this was a plan that I actually modified from one of the blueprints from the actually from the textbooks that we're even going through, and I went and kind of laid this out as my dream home, again, years ago, and done a lot of adaptations and that type of thing. But you can see just like the details and the lights and all that type of stuff, the garage. And obviously this is not the level or size of plan that I'm asking you to do, because technically if you would have done the medium cost analysis on this, I think this house would probably be in like the $1.5 million category. So, 5 times more than what is typically allocated. So if you're looking at the size of this and you're getting worried, don't worry, we're not getting to that extent. But in terms of the nature of the project and kind of what a final cut might look like, this is a good example. As far as like different floors, like a lot of you, I expect to do a single floor plan. I don't expect you to do a multi-level floor plan, simply because that if you do a multi-level floor plans take a lot longer to draw up than single level floor plans. And for this assignment, like if this is something that you're really into and you want to draw your dream house and you want to put that time in, totally go for it. Have fun, be creative, and just go for it. If this is just an assignment and you need to do it to get the grade and practice the skills that I want you to be working on, that's fine too. And some of the tricks that I'll just tell you with that is stick with simpler shape houses, so squares, rectangles, and stick to single level floor plans, and those things will save you a lot of time. The other thing to also keep in mind is that the packet that I gave you for BPP 7, that has those plans 1 through 10, those are good examples to refer to if you're looking for a house design, and if you like one of those, go off of that. Or if you go to Menards, they have like all those house plan booklets in that in the bookshelf by where like all the gift cards and stuff are at, and if you're looking for a cheap source of ideas, I think they're like $3 or $4 for a book, and it just has a bunch of floor plans and that type of stuff. You can even get like single floor plan book and go through that, or you can just go on the internet and find various house plans and just even copy one of those directly as far as this given assignment goes. You're not trying to take it and make money with it, so I don't foresee any copyright issue with that type of example. But find a plan you like, and if you want to take a plan and modify it a little bit and make it your own, do that too. That's what really has happened with this project that I redid that almost 10 years ago now. It's super crazy. So those are some things to take into consideration. Now, I want to zoom in here a little bit. Alright, so this is a 300-point assignment. It is a large assignment. This is going to make up almost 2/3 of your grade for this quarter, mainly because it's a summation of everything we've done for the quarter. And so there are some very basic criteria here. If you meet level 1 in one of these categories, you get 50% of the points. So, if you design a house with at least 3 bedrooms, 1 full bathroom, and a full kitchen with those minimum sizes, you automatically get 25 points. Woo! All right. And so how you get from 50 to 100% is that you have to design with the minimum requirements along with adequate storage space, space for a washer, dryer, water heater, and a garage, and those type of things, with space appropriate for a family of 4. So, if you forget to include a garage or a space for your washer or dryer, that would just bump you somewhere in the level 2 category instead of level 3. So you got to meet everything for level 3 to get 100%, and you got to meet this to get any points. So I'm not doing any 25% or 10%. Like, you have to get level 1 or nothing. Just kind of like what BPP 3 was, but a little bit more of a scaled rubric variation here. Now, blueprint accuracy, generally this is one that students get a lot of the points on. So, wall thicknesses, making sure that they're appropriate. And the satisfactory isn't significantly different. It's just, making sure that they're consistent in width and perpendicular and parallel to each other, and the wall should be filled in and your blueprint should be neat and clearly labeled. So when I talk about filled in, obviously like this floor plan, the walls pop because everything's filled in really nicely, and that's how you shift that over. House must be designed to fit in that lot. Now that those other parameters I gave you earlier, with the side dimensions, you have a huge amount of flexibility there in terms of the minimum requirements that you have in terms of space that you have to actually plot your house. So this is generally a pretty easy category, but you got to keep in mind of it a little bit, because you can't make like a 20-foot by 100-foot skinny house. Not sure why you'd want to do that, but there just are some basic parameters there. Electrical contractor. So follow building codes for outlets, lights, and switches. So, you just gotta follow some basic codes. Now, outlets should be placed accordingly to the minimum cost and optimized efficiency. So I'm just talking about, don't put in hundreds of millions of outlets. Don't put hundreds of millions of lights. Lighting should be present in all necessary rooms. Living rooms optional, with switches at appropriate locations notated correctly. 220-volt outlet should be placed accordingly for required appliances. And if you do want to put like an outlet in your closet and that type of thing, I just ask you to allocate funding for those outlets if you see it to be a necessity for your situation. All right, so moving along here. So then we have the lumber contractor. Provide your estimate, and you get points for providing an estimate. I know that may be a little bit loose. It's got to be, a number that looks like you actually tried. But then, to determine the number of 2x4 and 2x6 studs, that's where you get the 100%. And I go through all these and I count these, and I get an estimate and see if it matches up with what you have. And so flooring contractor, same thing. Determine the number of square footage needed, or the square footage in each room, and indicate the type of flooring you want to use in each room. And then, minimize the cost like we practiced with BPP 11, subtracting area from under the tub and that type of thing. Determine the volume of your home by taking the square footage measurement that you get and multiply it by 8. Pretty basic. Assume that you need 7 BTUs per cubic foot of space in your home. Determine how many BTUs your furnace should be able to produce to heat your home. All right, so that should be pretty basic. It's just your square footage times 8, and then your cubic volume times 7. All right, just like we talked about in the energy contractor BPP 8. Glazing contractor BPP 10. You should be able to calculate. First you should be able to notate your windows for size and that type of thing. Each window in a living area must be 12 square feet or larger so that it can be used as a potential fire escape. So those are minimums, but then where you optimize that is making sure that the window area of your home in comparison to your square footage is between 9 to 13%. 10% is kind of that sweet spot, but I give you a little bit of a range. So the example I give you here is that if you have a 1,000 square foot home, you need to be aiming for 90 to 130 square feet of window area. And if you don't have enough window area, you just add more windows. If you have too much window area, you subtract a couple windows. Calculate the square footage of the home. Estimate the cost of your building using the median cost per square foot calculated in class. Cost of the building, a garage is half the cost. We've talked about that. And your home should not exceed the total cost of $300,000. Now, with this, what I typically tell students is that if you want to build a mansion, like a $2 million house, if you calculate all that, you still get half the points. Now, what I typically tell students is that if they want to build that mansion, go for it. And what we'll do is we will go and find some little extra credit things for you to do to make up the points that you lose here. Okay, so if you want to make an adaptation, which is going to dock you a couple points there, just let me know, all right? Because I know you're going to put a fair amount of extra work into the blueprint to make that happen. So we'll make the extra credit that you need to do a little bit more manageable, you know, so that you can still get a really solid grade and not have to worry about that 22.5 points as much. You still have to earn them, but you know, I always try to make that accommodation if students want to do that. Now, this is extra credit, so what I do is I actually take your inspection record and I go through it and I inspect your property just like a, you know, city auditor would to some extent. And if I can't find any building code violations or incorrect calculations on your blueprint to an extent where I could pass you and give you a permit, you get 25 extra credit points on your project. Okay, so really pay attention to those details of the outlets, because if you have one outlet that's missing that really should be there, then you technically fail that project. So usually about 10% of students get this each year, but I'm always looking to see that number go a little bit higher. So what I'm going to go through here is, again, some things to keep in mind. You know, some of this has been restated. These are all the requirements. Full bathroom. It's got to be at least 5 by 8 feet. Bedrooms must be at least 7 by 10 in size, with appropriate closet space. Obviously, you can make rooms bigger. Don't make them smaller. All right. Make sure you have your washer, dryer, and water heater, and you have a garage with the ability to hold 2 cars. Now, there's a big reason that I have this extra page here. I know I'm repeating it, but it gets forgotten fairly often. And so just want to make sure that you get all those things. So refer to the rubric. The rubric is determining what your score will be. Okay? And so keep that in mind. Things to check before you submit. You know, make sure your name's listed on the top right-hand corner of your floor plan with your scale, 1/4 inch to 1 foot. I've had students do different scales in the past. So, and this is something that you should just do anyway, is write the scale just like it is on the Brad S. Fulton plan. So you should do that. This packet that I'm going through also needs to be included with your submission, and you should also fill out the rubric estimating your grade. Okay, so as I asked you to do with BPP 3, I also want you to do with BPP 12. I want you to give me your viewpoint of what you think your grade is. All right, when you're going through and hashing it out and looking at all that information. And so I want you to make that estimate of what you think there should be, because I want you to read the rubric, obviously, and go through that. I don't want you to submit a floor plan and then, you know, get 140 out of 300 and be like, oh, why did I get such a low grade? And like, well, there's this and this and this in the rubric. You know, and a lot of times what I find is if students go through the rubric, their grades are generally significantly higher. And generally, like, they're able to go through and catch a lot of those things, or at least do them to a level that is satisfactory to what I'm looking for. And again, it's a tool, you know, for me to keep you accountable, but it's also a tool for you to keep me accountable. Yeah, I think I said that right. And so, because if I'm giving you a grade that's different than what is stated on the rubric, that's something that, you know, you should just say, like, hey, like, it seems like these points should have been higher. Okay? And so there will also be an architectural site plan for BPP 13. And so, with all that said, I want to go through this packet with you so you kind of know what's going on here real briefly. I will do a little bit more detailed example in a future video, but what I'm doing here is these are all the different skills that I've talked about, the specific BPPs where we've targeted them, and what you'll be doing is you'll be filling these things out, and then what you'll also notice is that the section of the rubric that it applies to is also on the bottom. So again, there's this little review page with each main skill that we've talked about and really emphasized over the course of this quarter. And so kind of keep that in mind. And once you're done with your blueprint, you'll go through this and fill all this out, and then I can grade it. So there's that section. There's the electrical contractor. So there's a little bit of reminders here about 2-wire, 3-wire, what they're used for, how to do a normal switch and daisy chain it, how to use a 3-way switch setup, what those symbols should look like, how many outlets are in your home, how many light switches, how many of them are 3-way switches. Again, these are the types of things that electricians or electrical contractors are doing, is counting all that so they know. They go to Home Depot or Menards, pick up all the stuff that they need, and then these are the same criteria that are on the regular rubric, but they're just kind of sectioned off here so that it is in this nice, handy-dandy little cheat sheet for you, okay? So, lumber estimator, same thing, BPP 9. I got that diagram. You count your studs. You can write your studs there. Everything should be in this packet. Now, you can write it right on your blueprint, too. A lot of students write it right on their blueprint, but I've gotten to the point where I just have a packet, and I require the packet just because it's really easy to, miss things trying to go through the level of notes and indications and doodads and those type of things, and and I want to make sure that I give you all the points that you have earned through this activity, which is a big reason for this packet. Okay, so you are required to submit this packet in with your blueprint. So now to the back. Hey, flooring contractor. So you got your rooms, measurements of the room, total flooring needed, picking some material. BPPs 2 and 8 targets with the energy contractor, figuring square footage of your home, figuring out cubic volume of your home, figuring out BTUs. So you can see that all these things that I've been talking about in the rubric, there's all these little review pieces and indicators that help make sure that you get everything in that you should get. This should really make it a much easier task to get the majority of the points in this particular activity. All right, and so we have all that. Go to the back. This is the glazing contractor, so all your windows. Now, granted, there's a lot of space for windows here. I was just filling out the page. Total window area, total house area, window to house ratio, and again, this packet is meant to be a tool to make sure that you are demonstrating your skills that you have learned throughout all the other BPP assignments. And so now we'll go back. This is the inspection record and the type of thing I'll be filling out to see if you followed all the building codes. These are different things I'll be looking for. Your measurement diagram indicators for your windows are like that. Calculate your square footage. And you don't have to fill this out. This is something that I fill out. So, I'll write your name, and then I'll write my name, and I'll go through it. And as a last part of this, you can do one of these if you want, just to target that extra credit of that inspection record. But if you create a blueprint where I cannot find any flaws and I pass your blueprint, there's 25 points sitting there waiting for you. So, with that, the very last thing that I have on here are some examples of potential extra credit options. All right, and so these are some of the things I typically, just throw out at students, especially if they want to be building some $300,000 houses. And if you have things that you're curious about, these are definitely examples that we can do. Now, I usually limit this to some extent, to 5 or 10 points, depending on the circumstance. I want you to focus on the blueprint itself, not so much on the extra credit unless there's something of interest and you want to get those points. I usually cap it between 5 to 10 points for most students, unless, you know, it's students building these $2 million mansions. You know, then we'll sometimes talk about some alterations there. But yeah, so these are just some examples of things if you want to do a little extra work and get some points about things that you're curious about, do that. This very last page on the back, this is for your architectural site plan. I'll talk about that in the BPP 13 video. And that's really the main thing that I have here. So if you got everything you need and you think you can get started, or if you got an opportunity to at least write down your questions to ask in class in the near future, you know, this is really all I have to go through with the video. And with that said, let's do some math.